So this is Kim Callanan, and I'm here with Celia Morris, and she's one of our supporters in Massachusetts. And we were just having a conversation about her husband who recently died, and I wanted her to share a little bit about how she prepared for her end with him. So Celia, tell us a little bit.
Well, first of all, we've been supporters of this movement in various states that we've lived in, and you know, you never know that you're going to actually have to use it or be aware of it. And in fact, what we ended up doing was using your planning questions, which came out just at the right time. And my husband definitely wanted to talk about what the future held for him, because he found out that he had a rare muscle wasting condition called inclusion body myositis, SIBM it's called. And one of the places in the world that it's being studied is here in Boston. So he was diagnosed fairly quickly. There was no indication of how long he would be impacted by this, but he knew that it was a muscle wasting condition. Ultimately, he wouldn't be able to walk, and more importantly, he wouldn't be able to swallow. And we could see that he was having more and more difficulty with that. He mostly was drinking Ensures, which isn't a very exciting life. But he remained very positive, and he knew what his future would be. This was not going to be a pleasant end. He didn't particularly want to end his life at any particular time. It was not that he was planning that, but he helped us plan what would help him when it came to that time. And so he made it very clear with my daughters and me, and you know, all our family and friends knew about this. He said, when I can't swallow anymore, stop feeding me. And that turned out to be particularly helpful, because he was beginning to have the signs of Alzheimer's, which it turned out he did in fact have, but not enough to alarm us. We were still planning to move here. This place was not keen on having us here when he was not well. So it came a time when he really couldn't swallow anymore, and even giving him the Ensure felt like we were imposing on him. He really didn't want it, and it became increasingly difficult to get him enough to feel that he was at least being nourished. And we all looked at each other and said, okay, let's stop feeding him. And we initiated hospice at that point, which was almost useless because he only lasted for another 10 days or so. No discomfort. He could still drink water. He could still get up and use the bathroom. And he just faded away. And you can't ask for anything better than that for a life well lived. After he died, he had promised to donate his body, and so we did that. And a few months later, we heard from his doctors that they wanted to write up a paper about his circumstance. I think it had something to do with the fact that it revealed that his Alzheimer's was very far advanced, but the doctors didn't notice it. We didn't notice it. He was still perfectly, he was joking. He was, still recognized people. I mean, clearly he was having some difficulty, but it was not, we weren't yet terribly worried. So, best of all worlds, he had made the plans he wanted, and we were able to fill them without any qualms.
So thank you so much for sharing that story. If you had, 30 seconds or less to give people out in the world advice about how to prepare for the end, and you talked about using the Dementia Values and Priorities tool, what advice would you give to people?
I would say use those tools, because at the point where family becomes desperate and says, we've got to do something because this is not, clearly this person is not comfortable, you probably will not trust the answers you get from your loved one. if you even get cogent answers. And so it's so much better to have really, really planned it out, not just say, oh yeah, we're in general, don't want to last longer than we need to. It was a very easy, there was no conflict, because we knew we were doing what he wanted, and what we had all agreed was a good way for him to choose how to go.
Yeah. So it sounded like you guys really let death happen naturally, as opposed to what typically happens within medicine, which is that, something happens and we look for medical means. You guys allowed death to happen naturally. And
we knew it was going to happen,
Yeah.
And he knew it.
Yeah.
So it wasn't something that snuck up on us. The Alzheimer's was a sneaky thing,
Yeah.
he was so cogent that we were very surprised by the diagnosis of severe Alzheimer's.
Yeah.
And frankly, that's a worse death. I do not want to have severe Alzheimer's. It's a tough one. So.
Well, thank you so much for sharing. Can I get you to do the 30 seconds one more time? And I encourage you to use compassionate choices.
Oh, absolutely.
So that because people won't hear me, so they'll only hear you.
Okay.
So Celia, what sort of advice do you have for people who are at the end of their lives and need to plan?
Do plan. And one of the best ways to plan is to use the new forms or guidelines that Compassion & Choices provides. That was a godsend, because it really gives you a chance to talk with your family and say, what are the alternatives and what do you want to do at the point where there are choices to be made. And we found that very, very helpful. And I know my husband did. I don't think he had second thoughts after we'd gone through that. And I must say, it's helpful to have all your family on board. Don't surprise anybody with this.
So you heard it from Celia. Here in Massachusetts, please use Compassion & Choices end-of-life planning tools. Thank you.
And support Compassion & Choices. It's a wonderful organization.